You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and I have a confession. I have to confess right from the get-go, right from the jump. I have been hiding things from you. Yes, I have been hiding things. Not my name. My name is still Danielle, and I'm still the host of this show. But it's been brought to my attention that I've been hiding parts of my life and who I am, and a huge part of my life, and I'm ready to come clean. I'm ready to come clean. And a huge part of my life, and I do talk about it, is being a caregiver. I like someone the other day, we were talking about, social media and telling people more about who you are as a person. And I was just like, well, there's nothing to say about who I am as a person right now. I live a really boring life. Like, I don't do much. I am a caregiver. And that's what I said. I'm like, I live a boring life. I am a caregiver. I don't have a life. And I had to sit with that for a second and kind of go back into what that means and why would I say that and how does that make me feel? And so I caregive for my mom and my dad. My dad is 82. My mom is 70. Should be 78 this year. My dad had a stroke in the middle of COVID. My mom got sick in 2014 to where I remember, wasn't sure if she was going to make it. She was in the hospital. This is after they went on this amazing trip. My dad got pneumonia, was in the hospital. He came back the next day. My mom went in the hospital. My mom went in the hospital for weeks. And then, needed a walker. My mom stopped being able to drive. My mom, uses a wheelchair at times and, has a medical condition that, affects her legs and her ability to walk. And so, for many years, my dad has been my mom's caregiver. And, I've helped here and there, but I'm going to keep it real. I wasn't doing that much because my dad was there. My dad was my Superman. He was doing it all. So I didn't really have to do much. And then the pandemic happened and my dad had a stroke. And even though it wasn't the worst stroke in the world, things changed. So, which meant my life changed. It meant that my life of traveling and jet setting all these different places just because I can and because I want to was no longer. I no longer was, hopping on planes to go to all these amazing places. And I was here and I felt like I had to be here. And low key, I felt forced to be here. And I should have started this conversation starting off with the fact that this is a conversation about caregiving. It's a conversation about caregiving, whether you caregive for your elderly parents, whether you caregive for your children, whether you caregive for other people just in your life, because that's your position in, the job that you have, that brings in the money. This is about caregiving. This is about it. Caregiving, and I feel that there's not a safe place to say it, so I'm going to say it here. Caregiving sucks. Caregiving sucks. I'm saying it. Caregiving sucks. It doesn't mean that I don't love my family. It doesn't mean that you don't love your children or anyone you're caregiving for. But it ain't fun. Most of the time, 99 or 90% of the time, caregiving is not fun. It is not something that I wish on many people. I caregived to some degree for my niece and nephews, and that was fun. I love, because I also could, I had this thing where I borrowed and returned. I borrowed my niece and nephews. They were cute as kids. They're okay now as adults, or adult-ish. And so they were cute as kids. I loved borrowing them, and I loved caregiving for them. I loved feeding their souls, giving them new experiences. And then I loved returning them because that was a lot of work. we go to bed at 8 o'clock, and they probably wondered why was T, they called me T, like, why is T always wanting to go to bed at 8 o'clock? Because like after, a full day of 3 kids, I was tired. I was like, we're all going to bed. Because the quiet game didn't really work with my niece and nephews, especially my youngest nephew. But, caregiving at times, and I don't feel like there's a space where I feel comfortable to say that sometimes this sucks. And I feel the guilt of wanting to say that. The guilt of saying that at times, it's not that no, at times I resent my parents. I don't want them to go away. I am truly grateful for my parents being alive. But there's times where I'm just like, dang, like I want to do certain things. I want to, like, even in the midst of COVID, I wanted to, there was a time when I felt comfortable to go out and travel a little bit more, be out more in the public. But because I was caregiving for my parents, it was like, I felt the responsibility of, if I'm caregiving for my parents, it is very irresponsible for me to go out and travel somewhere in the world, bring back COVID, get them sick, and them not having the strongest immune systems, getting them sick, or me wanting to go hang out with my friends for brunch in the city, even though there's a surge. It just didn't feel right. So during COVID, I've been here. I have kept us in a safe bubble, and to the point where the safe bubble was like, it was my job. That was my only job, was to keep myself and my parents in our safe bubble. So I made sure that my dad wasn't going to the grocery store anymore because I needed to be in the safe bubble. So like I was going to go to the grocery store, and I had like this super duper mask, and people will look at me crazy. I had someone literally call my mask Darth Vader. And I was like, you can call my mask whatever you want to call it. If it keeps me and my family safe as a caregiver, that's my job. I'm doing my job. I'm doing my role, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm supposed to do like I should do. And I was shoulding all over myself. I talk about this often in the podcast about how we should all over ourselves. And as parents or people who are caregiving for your parents, we should over ourselves because we feel like society says we have to caregive a certain way. We have to caregive with a smile. Like, oh my God, I love my kids. They're so amazing. Even when they act a fool and they tell me that they hate me, I love absolutely moment of being a caregiver. No, I gotta believe there's moments where as a parent, a caregiver, or whatever you do, you're like, this ain't fun. It's not easy. But we're not given the space to say it's not easy without being judged. Or even worse, judging ourselves. I judge myself all the time, and it's a battle because I know better, but I don't always do better because I let the societal norms and what I feel and what I feel like I should be doing or saying or experiencing get in the way of my feelings. And so I've been hiding this part about me because it's like a lot of it doesn't feel fun. The fun part of it for me is it has provided me with a relationship with my parents I didn't think was possible. And it makes me a little bit emotional, but I didn't think was possible. I didn't think it was possible for me to love my parents. And I say this in a way of, the parents weren't easy. My parents were emotionally abusive. I mean, they weren't physically abusive, but my parents were emotionally abusive because that's what they knew. They parented from the parenting that they got, and they passed down that family trauma onto me and my brother. And it was what it was. My parents were always there. They were at all the games, even when I tried to make sure that they didn't know about my games and track meets. But emotionally, they weren't there. They were absent, literally absent. If I wanted something from my father, especially as a teenager, I would just ask him to spend time with them. And we get so angry that he's like, just go away. I'm like, oh, can I go to the mall? He's like, yeah, you can go wherever you want, just as long as you're away from me. And I had mastered this game, but that didn't feel good. So growing up and then becoming an adult when I could then choose to be around them and they treated me like the black sheep, I didn't want to be around them. My parents were just kind of mean and slightly evil. So I never thought I would be the one to step in to be the caregiver, to be the main person. I never thought I would be the one to say that, oh my God, I really love my parents. I love spending time with them. My parents are crazy. I call my mom Daisy because I'm like driving Miss Daisy, and my dad, I just call him crazy because my dad doesn't care. My dad gives no F's. He says what he wants. He's a little bit racist, unfortunately. And he's just dogmatic about his feelings, and it's his way or no way. Perfect example. Not so long ago, my dad has been going through this situation where due to the stroke and all things that's happening, he's losing his independence. And a huge part of who he is his independence. And so he's finding all these random projects to do around the house just to show that he's in control and he's doing something. And so my dad decided to throw up all of my clothes and anything I had in the house just to make space for an empty room. Not that they're doing anything with the room. The room still has furniture in it. They just threw out my stuff. My brother's stuff is still there. Yes, I'm still very salty about the situation. But he just threw it in garbage bags without giving me the warning that, hey, I feel like I'm going to clean. You have X amount of days to get your stuff before it goes somewhere else. Didn't get the warning. I say all this to say, despite all these moments with my, the hardships that I have and, in dealing with certain things about my parents, I love them. I love spending time with them. Like, I go over there often, not always just because they need something or the fact that I need to be needed. And that's something I also want to talk about a little bit later, but because I have built a relationship with these two people that I never had before. Like, I went to Chicago for my friend's wedding. My mom had a doctor's appointment that she didn't tell me about. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me about the appointment? Like, we could have rescheduled. Like, this is my job as a caregiver. I take you to these appointments. She's like, I know. And I missed you. I missed you taking me to these appointments. My dad says, thank you. And I'm like, who? Are you talking to me? My dad never said thank you back in the day. And it's a word he says more often. I'm not saying it's all the time, but he says thank you, and we can have conversations. My mom can have conversations. And I took him on a road trip about 3 or 4 hours away, and we spent, a couple days over by Hearst Castle, like midway, like between here and LA. And it was a fun trip. And it's just like if I never allowed myself the ability and the space and the capacity to step into this caregiver role, I never would have experienced that relationship with my parents. And I think that's the same way with, some people who have kids. Like, if you didn't give yourself the space to birth these children or to take these children on as your own, because a lot of people caregive for kids they didn't actually give birth to. But there's the joy that comes out of those relationships, the joy that comes out of that growth. But it doesn't negate that there's also the battle of maybe some resentment. And that's something that I have struggled with. Like, I love my parents, but at the same time, in the same coin, there is some resentment because I'm grieving my old life. I'm grieving the Danielle who was free to do whatever she wanted. The Danielle who was free to just live and be and had no responsibilities outside of herself. Now I have two people that I can't beat. I thought about this. I'm like, how do you parent a parent when you can't beat them and you cannot put them in timeout? And they're adults, so they have their own mind, they have their own money. You can't take things away from them. I've thought about taking the keys away from my dad. I just know that that's going to go really sour real fast, real quick. So I haven't done it because I really believe he needs to stop driving. But he's not ready to accept that. So learning how to parent your parent is it's a skill set. It's a skill set that we aren't, I don't know. There needs to be a training. I mean, I'm not the one to do it, but I feel like maybe there is someone out there. But if that's something that sounds like you can do, I would highly, highly, highly recommend create a coaching program on how to coach people on how to parent their parents, because it's an art form. It's a daily battle, and it changes constantly. And it is some days where I just don't know. I don't know. Some days I don't have it in me. And I go to this by saying that this isn't my first rodeo. I had to care. I didn't have to. And this is where also didn't have to care. I don't have to care for my parents. My parents technically have the money. If I want to say F you, they have the money to pay for their own caregiver. My parents have a whole other child who is healthy and can also help out more. So I didn't have to. I was not forced. And that was something that I have to go back and forth on with myself to remind myself that ain't no one forcing me to be here. So when I get resentful of the situation, no one is forcing me. No one is forcing you to take care of your kids, or, well, maybe the government, CVS, or what was it, Child Protective Service, CPS. They may force you, but no one forced you to have child, to my knowledge. And if they did, that's a whole other ballgame. And I respect and honor all those different situations. I know everyone has situations, but for majority of us who have kids or are parenting our parents or caregiving for our parents, we're not being forced. You have a choice. I mean, adoption's a choice, but adoption's not a choice for your parents. No one wants to adopt my parents. I'm like, I don't know why. I was like, ooh, is that something I could do? But no, I can't do it. But you have a choice. So no one's forcing you. But when we tell ourselves, oh my God, I'm being forced to do this, you're taking things away from me, I'm forced and forced and forced, energetically, you're putting this weird vibe in this lower frequency out into the universe. You, and I say me, and I have done that. And I've had to check myself frequently to be like, no one's forcing you. You are choosing this lifestyle. You have chose this lifestyle, and at any point you can choose not to do this lifestyle, but you have chosen to take care of your parents. And when I'm able to shift my words, shift my mindset to it's a choice versus a force, I show up differently. I see them differently. I'm able to soften and release some of the resentment that I have, and recognizing that, yeah, I need to grieve and allow myself to grieve the life that I had, or the life that I think I desire, and be okay with it to where I am. Be okay where I am today. That when I choose to caregive for my parents, that means, yeah, my business is going to probably suffer a little bit. It doesn't have to, but I can't do things at the level that I would like to do when I have no other responsibilities, because I have responsibilities that I'm choosing to take care of. At the same time, I'm choosing to also make space for nourishing myself. And I think that's something as caregivers we sometimes forget. We're so busy giving and giving and giving to other people that we forget to take care of ourselves. And that's what I did before. So I was a caregiver for my aunt who passed away. She had like stage 4 heart failure, stage 4 something else. Like, she had everything you could name it, she had. And my aunt didn't want to be a bother. And so she would be like, oh, well, I don't want to bother you to do this. I don't want to bother you to do that. And I'm like, you're not a bother. Because she was there for me my entire life. And that was a point where I knew it was a choice. And I wanted to make sure she understood it was a choice, that I want to be here. I want to honor the joy and the gifts that you gave to me for most of my life. And my aunt passed away in 2018 because she was eating too many cup of noodles, and I was really pissed off. I was really angry. I'm like, I've put all this effort into caregiving for you, and you, as a registered nurse, knew what you were doing by eating this high sodium things, and you chose. And I honestly believe she chose because she didn't want to be here, because she didn't want to be a burden on someone else. And I say this because as a caregiver, we don't always think about the energy we're putting out there of other people on the other side, the people that we're caring for, feeling like they're the burden. Are your kids considering of thinking that they're a burden? Like, there's times where I thought I was a burden to my parents because, like, why don't they want to talk to me? Why did they act like I literally don't count? Why don't they tell me they love me? Am I worthy enough? Like, did I do something wrong? And so I invite you to just to be aware of how you're showing up when you're caregiving. Being aware of your words, your body language, and the energy that you bring to that space, because they feel that. And I wonder, did I show to my aunt that, oh my God, you're taking away from my travel? Because I still was traveling in that time frame. So I was traveling, but coming back. And so I wonder what she felt. I think there was probably a little bit of that, but I also feel like she never wanted to be a burden on anyone. She was so busy and used to being independent, kind of like my father, that she was tired and she wasn't feeling well, and she just was ready. And so she pushed the situation along. And I don't wish that on anyone, because that was hard. That was a hard time in my life. But as a caregiver, I didn't allow myself to grieve. I was like, oh, okay. My aunt passed, I'm planning my first funeral, figuring this out. What is she going to wear? And like, she was a hoarder. I'm like, good. That was a nightmare. Like, let's clean this hoarder place out and get everything together, our bills together, all these other things together, and let's move on. And I moved on to caregive for my cousin. Same year. Caregiver for my cousin, who was quickly passing away from pancreatic cancer. And my cousin is my everything. My cousin Beverly was everything. She was my moon, my star. She was my therapist. She was my, intervention. She was everything. And I wanted to be there for her. So again, I chose to be that caregiver. I chose to help her kids, when knowing that I'd just gone through 2 or 3 months before caregiving for my aunt, and seeing how that felt and going through those emotions. And as I get emotional now, because I'm like, those two people were two people who I felt have loved me the most in my life, and I lost them in the same year. And so I knew that caregiving isn't always easy. And so I wanted to, gift her kids with not having to do everything, and being there for them and helping them so they can have time to process what was going on and not have to take on the full burdens in situations and activities and roles as a caregiver. But that was hard. It's hard watching someone you love slowly pass away. And I feel like I'm doing that with my parents. I'm so protective of them, because I'm like, oh my God, if I'm not the best caregiver ever, if I don't keep them in the bubble, something can happen to them. And not that it's my fault, but it's like, I feel like I have this magical role to where I can protect them, and really I can. And I can protect them to some degree, just like you can protect your kids or other people you caregive to a certain degree. But the universe has a plan for absolutely every single one of us. And you can hold on tight as you want, but the universe is going to do what the universe wants to do. And universe, God, source, Allah, whatever you want to name, but they're going to do what they're going to do. And we all have a plan. And holding on, I found as a caregiver isn't a good look. I found that I can't put my parents in a locked room. I've tried, it did not work. My parents have decided to go away on a cruise, and they literally waited to the last minute to tell myself and my brother, because I knew we were like, they're not going on a cruise, because we were trying to lock them up. That was what caregivers do. Like, they don't know. And I was like, it was my job to protect them from themselves. I still feel like I still do. It is still my role to protect them from themselves. But I'm able to realize from a different perspective as a caregiver that it's also my job to allow them to live their lives. My parents have earned it. And the same with your kids. Like when parents hold on so tight, you can't do this, you can't do that. I need to protect them. That's my job, that's my role. When you're so focused in on your kid's life and what they're doing, you're forgetting about you. And I see this in some of my friends. I have one friend who is a mother of 3, and she's dedicated her entire life to her kids to where she doesn't think about herself. She doesn't think about her well-being, and she's not thought about her well-being to the point where it has affected her. And I'm very worried when her last child goes away to, the world, whether it's college or whatever. I always wonder, well, what's that going to do to her? Allowing, because when your role is only the caregiver, that's who you are. If I said, Danielle, who's Danielle? Danielle's only a caregiver, which is what I essentially said to someone not too long ago. Like, I'm only a caregiver. That negates all the other aspects of who I am. I'm a healer. I am a person who loves to do adventurous things. I love crystals. I love nature. I am a Virgo. I don't know, I'm a lot of things. I love cocktails. I love yoga. I am a yogini. I am a Reiki master. So when I say I'm only a caregiver and I have a boring life, no, I'm not. And sometimes as caregivers, we need to recognize that there's always been you before caregiving even occurred. There was always a you before you had that child. There was always a you before your parents or some other person who you're taking care of needed you. So we got to honor that you. Because it's really hard to pour into other people when you're pouring from a cup that is dusty, dirty, and empty as AF, because you aren't feeling it. And in these last years of me saying my life was boring, I wasn't feeling it. I've been feeling it to some degree. I've been feeling it with Reiki, which has been beautiful. Recently been feeling it with yoga, which, there's a podcast there, because yoga for me, Kundalini yoga, is just been the the lights are opening up, the floodgates are opening, and I feel so much gratitude, so much love, so much openness, and so much energy has come through doing yoga. And I'm grateful for these moments. And that's how I pour into me. And for the last couple of years, I've been wondering, like, what's my joy? Because again, I thought my joy came from travel. And when I couldn't travel, and I say I couldn't travel because I chose not to travel, because I chose to be here for my parents, I didn't know what brought me joy. And I had to rediscover myself, and I had to shift how I nourish myself. And I also had to shift how I nourish myself in the midst of a pandemic. And that's something as caregivers we need to do. It's great to be a caregiver. And we get into these superpower heroes where, dun, da, 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 I'm here to save the day. No, you're not. As a caregiver, you're there to give the care. You're not there to save the day. You're not there to fix the situation, fix the person, live their lives for them, and take over control. You're there to give love, to give needs, but also to remember that in order to do that, you got to love and nourish on yourself. So that's what I'm doing this weekend. I'm loving and nourishing on myself. More to come on that one. I hope this touched someone. Like, I would love to hear from you guys. Being a caregiver is something that it's something. In any capacity that you do it, there's no right way to do it. And just know that you're doing the best you can every single day, every single minute, every single second, and honor that it's okay. There's no rule book. I love you, and I'll talk to you next week. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.